Left stranded by my family's cruel joke, I discovered an incredible truth at the wheel. Reading. Emily Harris stood in the stuffy living room of her family's ancestral home, the stale smell of coffee mingling with barely concealed tension. Today was the day her grandfather's will would be read. A family event tinged with excitement and an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. At 32, with a heart dedicated to nurturing the minds of her elementary school students, she felt painfully out of place among the accolades showered upon her brother Nick, a high-flying businessman whom their parents revered. As laughter erupted around her, highlighting her brother's latest successes, an all-too-familiar dread wrapped itself around her. How was her worth measured in a family that saw only profession and profit? When the reading began, the room fell silent. The lawyer's voice droned on, each word like a heavy stone hitting the ground, sinking deeper into Emily's heart. It was all written out, her family's expectations glaring like a neon sign in the dark. Then came the pivotal moment. Emily's name was called, and an envelope was handed to her. What could it possibly be? She questioned silently, only to feel the glances aimed at her, part disbelief, part contempt. As she tore open the envelope, confusion struck hard. A rundown farmhouse on the edge of town? Her grandfather's burden? Laughter erupted again. Instant jabs at her vulnerability piercing through the air. But anger simmered beneath her skin. This was no mere financial inheritance. This was her family denouncing her passion, discounting the rapport she'd built with her students. What a joke! She muttered under her breath, feeling the sting of tears at the corners of her eyes. The whispers of disappointment danced mockingly around her, but she pushed through. Discovering the journal in the attic of that very farmhouse became her glimmer of hope. Its pages, dense with her grandfather's dreams of teaching, stirred something deep within her. What if she could transform this dilapidated building into a vibrant community learning hub? What if it could be the very place where children discovered the love of learning that she cherished? Yet doubt lingered. It clawed at the edges of her mind as family whispers began to creep back in. She thinks she can just fix that old thing? The barbs were evident in their undertones, feelings of hopelessness flooding her senses. Each time she tried to express her vision of the farmhouse, her family shrugged it off as a whimsical fantasy, incapable of seeing past their narrow definitions of success. Emily's breaths quickened with every new obstacle. Financial constraints began to mount, each bill added weight to her already burdened shoulders. The farmhouse became not just a dream, but a battleground for her very identity as her brother's calculated disdain cut deeper than a simple critique. He viewed her ambitions as naive, her dreams worthless. She felt the chaotic storm of frustration and despair raging within her. Nothing but a teacher, always in his shadow. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as she started gaining momentum with her plans, a long-buried family secret threatened to emerge like a ghost in the shadows. Her brother, ever so calculating, seemed poised to reclaim the farmhouse's value. Standing in that unstable structure, every crack and creak hollowed out by doubt, Emily understood what was at stake: her worth, her dreams, and the familial ties threatening to become tangled beyond repair. So here she stood, confronting a reality, steeped in contradiction. Was she willing to fight not just for bricks and mortar, but for her place in this family, for acknowledgement as someone worth more than a comparison? The fight was on, and with it brought the heart-wrenching question: could she redefine her identity and earn respect from those who saw her as just the teacher? As the dawning realization hit her, she braced for the family confrontation looming like a storm on the horizon. The farmhouse loomed before Emily, a skeletal frame wrapped in ivy, whispering of both loss and possibility. With each step she took toward it, her heart pulsed with a mixture of trepidation and determination. The decision weighed heavily on her. Would she pour her energy into reclaiming this place, or surrender to the shadows of familial doubt? As she entered through the splintered doorway, beams of sunlight danced through broken windows, illuminating dust motes swirling like her swirling thoughts. She stood in the middle of the forgotten kitchen, remembering her grandfather's stories, how he envisioned a world filled with eager minds and inquisitive hearts, a world he hoped to inspire. The dream bubbled in her chest, pushing back against the dampening doubts that had recently taken root. Clutching the journal tightly, she flipped through its yellowing pages. Scrawled in her grandfather's hand were sketches of classroom layouts, ideas for theatrical performances, and even his preferred reading lists for children. It was a manifesto of hope, a reminder that her purpose was intertwined with his aspirations. This was more than just a musty house. It was a vessel for ideals and love, and she had an opportunity to breathe life back into it. With renewed clarity, Emily began to brainstorm how she could transform the nearly condemned farmhouse. She envisioned art classes, summer reading programs, and community discussions. Her mind raced through a myriad of possibilities: local artists' workshops, storytelling evenings, and tutoring sessions for struggling students. Each idea invigorated her in ways her family's disdain never could. But as the day progressed, reality set in. The roof sagged and the plumbing barely functioned. Emily could not ignore the financial burden ahead. Even with a plan, she needed funds, money that could restore the farmhouse and make her vision a reality. Could she seek out loans? Apply for grants? Each option danced tantalizingly close, yet the fear of failure loomed larger. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Nick, brief and terse. "I suggest you rethink your plans for the house. It's not worth the trouble." A sharp breath escaped her as she read the words. They were a punch to the gut, a reminder of the battle she faced not only with the farmhouse but with the naysayers in her own family. She stared blankly at the screen, feeling the conflict swell. Nick's words ignited fury within her. How could he understand what this meant to her? To her, it was a chance to showcase her worth, a legacy challenging the narrow confines her family had thrust upon her. But did confronting him directly serve her purpose, or would it only widen the chasm between them? Emily paced the unsteady floorboards, her heart racing. Her instincts screamed at her to be brave and confront her brother head-on. Yet the weight of familial expectation trained her to flee from confrontation. Could she risk engaging him, or would that simply play into their unyielding patterns of judgment? Desperate for clarity, she sought silence. Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply, willing her scattered thoughts into focus. What did she truly want to prove? The answer emerged, a clear voice amidst the cacophony of doubt. It was not about proving her worth to Nick or her parents. It was about harnessing the passion that thrived within her. She wanted to forge a path not just for herself, but for all the children she longed to teach, children who, like her, could struggle to find validation in a world demanding conformity. With resolve hardening in her core, Emily opened her eyes, a decision crystallizing in her mind. She would not only fight for the farmhouse, she would fight for the chance to create the impact her grandfather once dreamed of. But that fight would have to begin with a confrontation. Gathering strength, she picked up her phone and dialed Nick's number. The time had come for her to face him not just as a sister but as a determined woman with a vision, ripe with purpose. Would he recognize her resolve, or would she have to stand firm against the tide of his scorn? As the phone rang, she felt the urgency swell within her, an electric anticipation for what might finally unfold. The ringing echoed sharply in Emily's ears, each tone heightening the tension coiling deep within her. She could almost hear the quiet laughter of doubt from her family, like a distant storm gathering strength. Nick finally answered, his voice crisp and guarded. "What is it, Em?" She hesitated, words tangled in her throat as fear and determination crashed like waves. The farmhouse stretched behind her, silent yet whispering, urging her on. "I want to talk about Grandma's house," she finally said, her voice steady despite the fluttering chaos within. "Listen, I think you should." "I'm not asking for permission," she interjected, surprising even herself with the force of her assertion. "You know what? I'm doing this. I'm reclaiming that farmhouse." A pause, then a sigh. "You're wasting your time. It's full of problems that can be solved." The conviction flooded her from a place deep inside, igniting a fire that threatened to consume her fears. "I see potential where you see ruin. Don't you want to at least hear my plans?" "Emily, you're not going to change anything. You're just going to get hurt. I can't watch you throw away your future." His voice turned hard, a protective brother hardened by their past. The protective tone stung, days of pent-up frustration almost bubbling to the surface. You mean watch me step outside of your defined box for me? I'm finding my own future, Nick, not the one you think is best for me. You need to be realistic. I am being realistic, she protested, desperation threading through her words. I want to create something meaningful to teach kids who might feel as lost as I did. Do you really want to keep burying our family legacy, our grandfather's dream, because you think it won't work? A long silence fell, the silence of confrontation holding its breath. You need to let this go, Em. You're chasing shadows. Shadows are all you've ever seen. The truth is, I can do this. I need to do this. If you can't support me, then at least respect my decision. Nick's response came slowly, his reluctance palpable. You're stubborn as a mule. Fine, do what you want. Just don't come asking for help when it falls through. As he hung up, Emily felt the weight of his disapproval. Her heartbeat thudded fiercely, questions fluttered in her chest, but she was no longer tethered by his judgment. With each pulse her resolve solidified. She stood before the farmhouse, a weary soldier in a battle against not just her brother but herself. Plans began to form in her mind, obstacles outlining potential paths rather than detours. She turned her eyes to the dust-covered windows, imagining not only the existing inhabitants of her memories but a new generation, eyes wide with wonder. The concept of a fundraiser started to blossom, a community willing to embrace the farmhouse again, to nurture creativity. Stepping further into the space, she felt the air shift, the promise of transformation washing over her. The creaks of the old structure were less foreboding and more welcoming, a gentle reminder that everything once loved holds the potential for rejuvenation. However, questions still clawed at her mind. Would anyone be willing to share her vision? The next logical step sparked in her mind, a community meeting. She needed to gauge interest, see who would dare to rally around the idea. And while eliciting support could open her to more skepticism, it could also imbue her with the strength of those who dared to dream with her. As she pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers hovered over the contacts. Organizing the meeting would require courage, a willingness to expose her ideas to the very skeptics she sought to convert. Yet wasn't he that part of the journey, navigating uncertainty toward potential? With a deep breath, she initiated a text to local friends and educators. Planning a community meeting at the farmhouse. Interested? The send button felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. As she walked deeper into the farmhouse, visions of what could be danced in her mind, a shimmering portrait painted with the brushstrokes of uncertainty and hope. There was no turning back, and with each step, she embraced the complexity of her aspirations, half aware that this fight was only beginning. How could she inspire others to see what she saw? The echoes of her grandfather's dreams lingered like whispers through the rafters. It was time to transform them into reality. But as her phone buzzed again, a new wave of anxiety washed over her. What message could be waiting this time? Emily's heart raced as she glanced at her phone screen, a mix of dread and anticipation swirling within her. The notification flickered, an unknown number, one that pulled her attention like a magnetic force. With a deep breath pushed through clenched teeth, she opened the message. Hey Emily, I got your text. I think I can help with the farmhouse. Can we meet? The message felt like a sliver of light breaking through the clouds. Who was this person and why did they want to help? She had fired the first shot in what felt like a lonely battle, a loud declaration of intention against the backdrop of her family's skepticism, and here was someone willing to back her up. She quickly typed a response, arranging to meet at the cafe downtown. As the hours stretched out, anticipation ran parallel with anxiety. What did this stranger see in her vision? What could they offer? The cafe's familiar hum should have been soothing, but the mingling aromas of coffee and pastries only heightened her awareness of how precariously her aspirations balanced on the edge of acceptance. In the corner sat a man with tousled dark hair, his fingers absently drumming a rhythm against the table. Emily approached hesitantly, glancing at his face. There was something familiar about him, an odd sense of recognition echoing from her childhood days spent at the farmhouse. Emily, he said, leaning forward as she sat down, flashing a smile that warmed the chilly space around them. I'm Derek. I used to visit the farm a lot when I was a kid. My parents knew your grandparents. Her lips curved at the edges, a fleeting moment of connection rekindling distant laughter shared over the farmhouse dinner table. I remember you, the funny one with the crazy stories, she replied. Her words light yet weighted, I was probably the only kid interested in the ghosts in the attic, he chuckled, his demeanor easing the tension she had carried into the conversation. But nostalgia aside, I think what you want to do with the place is amazing. As the conversation flowed, she filled him in on her vision and art space, a refuge for children and families to explore creativity and learn together. Her enthusiasm brightened Derek's expression, transforming him from a casual acquaintance to a confidant who could share her conviction. I can help spread the word, he offered, and his voice took on a seriousness that reflected her own growing determination. There's a lot of place-based initiatives in town. If you can draft up some ideas, we could present it as a proposal to gather resources. Teach a few classes. Duty and passion, it can work hand in hand. Derek's confidence ignited something within Emily, pushing back against the lingering doubt that had accompanied her brother's words. She realized that she could approach this from a professional standpoint that not only showcased her ideas, but also their potential impact. As she discussed the logistics, excitement coursed through her veins. This was the first concrete step toward making something dreamlike into a tangible reality. They worked through plans, mapping out potential funding sources, contacts, and community interest. Each word exchanged from Derek seemed to shrink the divide between dream and reality. Each idea was a nail driven into the foundation of a newfound purpose. However, unease prickled in the back of her mind. How was she going to create all of this without facing the backlash of her family, particularly from Nick? Would he and the others reject her vision totally if it gained momentum? Have you thought about how your family will take it? Derek asked abruptly, sensing the change in her energy. The question hung heavy between them. She frowned, digging into the depths of her hostility and worry toward her brother's lack of support. It was one thing to see her future positively, but another entirely to challenge her family's expectations. As the conversation came to a close, a mix of hope surged along with the weighty dilemma of familial acceptance. Their ability to rally support need not merely shift the tide. It had to withstand the waves of disapproval that could crash against it as they parted ways. A thought echoed in Emily's mind. Would she dare to confront this family legacy? Not just in the public space but in the private one at home too? Walking away, Emily's resolve tightened. She was willing to navigate this storm. Yet uncertainty lingered, teasing her to rethink her commitment to her family. Was she ready for the confrontation ahead? The question loomed large as she stepped back onto the dimly lit street, her heart thrumming with the anticipation of everything yet to come. Emily woke the next morning with avenues of possibility coursing through her mind, lighting a path forward from the grayness of uncertainty that had lingered through the night. The sun filtering through her curtains felt curiously like a promise, one that urged her to act. She had dared to dream. Meeting Derek had sparked momentum, and she couldn't allow doubt to stifle that momentum before it even began. A sense of urgency propelled her into a frenzy of activity as she grabbed her notebook, now filled with ideas and outlines. It had become a canvas where her aspirations took form, a bridge from thought to action. She meticulously organized her notes, ensuring she captured both the practical and passionate elements of her vision for the farmhouse. Each bullet point was an affirmation, a reminder of her commitment to creating something beautiful and meaningful. But no matter how fervently she worked, the specter of her family's skepticism loomed. Every stroke of her pen seemed to echo murmurs of disapproval. She had absorbed over the years the planted seeds that had blossomed into an enormous tree of doubt. Would they dismiss her efforts? Would they point to the folly of her ambitions, poking at her resolve until it fractured? The way Nick had scoffed at her ideas played through her mind like the distant echoes of thunder. She shook her head, expelling the negativity. If anything, the very thought of their derision fueled her focus. It was no longer just about the farmhouse. It was about defining herself in a narrative that hadn't yet been written, a narrative of her own making. With a sudden rush of inspiration, Emily reached for her phone and started drafting an email to a local art organization. They could help bridge her vision into the community, opening doors she hadn't even considered before. Each keystroke felt liberating, unshackling her from the restraints her family had unconsciously placed on her for so long. She could do this. She had the ability to rewrite her story. Just as she hit send, a wave of vulnerability washed over her. What if her proposal was met with apathy? What if the ideas that felt so monumental in her head fell flat to others? The need for validation seeped in. Then came the debilitating urge to retract her proposal before anyone could read it. She gripped the edge of her desk, conflicting thoughts swirling inside her like a storm. Steeling herself, she opened the app for her family's group chat, where she could hear their collective voices in her head. Her fingers hovered over the screen, the urge to communicate the good news battling with a nagging fear of their eventual responses. Maybe it's better to keep this to myself for now, she whispered to the silence that filled her room. But just when she thought she could retreat, a message from Derek pinged through. I was thinking about our conversation. I can help with the pitch to the art organization if you'd like. We can meet later this week to run through everything. His enthusiasm eclipsed her doubts, rekindling the spark of mentorship she had felt during their previous discussion. A quick rush of warmth spread through her as she envisioned the partnership, and for the first time, the idea of collaboration began to eclipse her familial fears. Together, they could navigate the pitch, tailoring her ideas to catch the eye of the community leaders. This was no longer just her vision. It felt larger, infused with a shared determination. She responded affirmatively, eager for the plan that was forming. The day unfolded like a new chapter waiting to be written. As she walked through her neighborhood with her notebook in hand, Emily found herself mentally mapping out the proposal as she absorbed the sights around her. Each detail, the children playing in the park, the artists painting murals, added color to her vision. The familiarity of the surroundings began to melt away the anxiety that had overshadowed her waking hours. With every step, she pondered the confrontation ahead, steeling herself for the familial upheaval that might follow. But deep down, she felt a new strength growing within her, an undeniable urge to advocate for her choices, to stand firm as she forged ahead. Now, with the timeline forming and a supportive ally at her side, she understood that the fear of her family's reactions would only become an obstacle if she allowed them to define her path. She would have to confront them eventually, but that could wait. For now, her focus was on building the foundation for her vision. Emerging from her introspection, she suddenly had an unshakable thought. The time had come not only to craft her future but to transform herself into the person who could confront these shadows head-on. What Emily didn't know yet was that her family's reaction would take an unexpected turn, one that could either solidify her resolve or shatter her newfound purpose. As she prepared to gather her thoughts for the upcoming meeting with Derek, the undertone of confrontation buzzed in the air like a storm waiting to break. Emily spent the next few days in a bubble of creative fervor, pouring her energy into refining her proposal with Derek's guidance. Each draft brought her closer to articulating a vision that had long existed merely in her mind. The work was daunting yet exhilarating, each revision peeling back layers of self-doubt. Derek's constructive criticism kept her grounded while his excitement about her ideas propelled her forward. She knew this was a pivotal moment not just for her vision, but for who she was becoming. Late nights filled with brainstorming culminated in a polished outline that felt authentic to her voice. Emily began each day reviewing her notes once again, transforming any residual nerves into clarity and conviction. With every word, she grasped more acutely that this was a personal manifesto, a declaration of her identity. But as the meeting approached, the mental burdens of family expectations resurfaced, prickling at her resolve. She could hear the echoes of her father's dismissive comments and her mother's subtle critiques, always laced with love yet tinged with skepticism. "Are you sure you want to go down this path, Em? Seems risky," her mother had said, a phrase that danced in Emily's head, leeching the brightness from her achievements. Stepping into the local cafe for their meeting felt like crossing a threshold into another world, a place where her doubts might fade, even if just for a little while. The cafe buzzed with vibrant colors and laughter, an atmosphere teeming with possibility. She spotted Derek at a wooden table by the window, engrossed in his notes. A wave of appreciation washed over her. He was investing in her dream as much as she was. "Hey, ready to dive in?" Derek greeted her, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. Transitioning into the discussion felt smooth, their ideas intertwining like brush strokes on a canvas. They dissected her outline, articulating not only the logistical elements but also the heart of her vision. Each point they tackled drew Emily deeper into understanding what she truly wanted to create. Derek's insights not only strengthened her proposal but also unveiled aspects of her character she had kept buried: her resilience, her creativity, and her boldness. However, a gnawing anxiety lingered. As she presented her ideas, The fear that it wouldn't be enough lingered like a shadow. It was upon reflection that she recognized this wasn't merely about securing validation. It was about stepping into her identity as an artist and a leader. Her internal dialogue shifted as each affirmation she received from Derek chipped away at her insecurities. He observed closely, nodding and encouraging her to elaborate on what excited her most. "Emily, this can resonate," Derek encouraged, challenging her to push beyond the conventional. It hit her then this was more than a proposal for a project. It was a confirmation of who she was at her core. The idea of collaborating with the local community felt electric. Sharing her passion was exhilarating rather than terrifying. Yet the impending confrontation with her family loomed over her like a thick fog, ready to disrupt the newfound clarity as they finalized the details. Emily made a mental checklist of everything she'd say to her family. Would she muster the courage to confront their doubts head-on? That afternoon, a text came from Nick, innocuous enough but enough to rattle her again. "Just heard about your plans. Mom and Dad want to sit down soon. Hope you're ready for a chat." The words injected doubt back into her bloodstream, each one raising her pulse. What would they think? How would they react to her ambitions? In that moment of uncertainty, she felt a shift. This could be the catalyst for growth not just for her, but for them too. If she was to stand firm in her choices, her family might just need to face the reality of her evolution. Weeks converged upon her as realizations cascaded like rushing water. She realized confronting them could redefine their relationships, reframe her identity amidst old expectations. With her heart pounding, Emily stepped away from the cafe with a transformed purpose. While the pressure of familial challenges hovered over her, the merging of her and Derek's visions felt like a radical change in the wind. She was done waiting for approval. The spotlight now required her to act. What remained unknown was how this new strain of confrontation would reshape her relationships forever. Emily felt a sense of purpose blossom within her, a weapon forged by authenticity and determination. But the true test lay ahead. She was preparing for a family meeting that could either open new dialogues or catalyze tensions she had long avoided. Emily paced in her small apartment, the walls narrowing around her like a closing gate. It was too quiet, the silence amplifying her internal conflicts. The meeting loomed ahead like a storm cloud, heavy and oppressive. Thoughts swirled in her mind, warring between hope and dread. She was not ready to let her family's expectations suffocate her burgeoning identity. She grabbed a notebook, its pages grimy with the fingerprints of earlier brainstorming sessions. Every note she'd taken stood as a testament to her journey, her evolution. Yet all the words felt brittle now, unreal against the gravity of what she faced. She needed to confront not just her family's doubts, but the foundations on which her identity had been built, or, more accurately, constrained. Her fingers hovered over the page as she wrestled with her words, channeling her dwindling confidence into a manifesto of sorts. This is who I am. This is what I want. But could she truly claim those statements? Throughout her life, she had tiptoed around the expectations of her parents, quietly ignoring her own dreams for fear of disappointing them. This proposal was her rebellion, but would it resonate as intended, or would it invite an avalanche of disapproval? Dark memories of past confrontations flickered in her mind, arguments where her voice had been drowned out by theirs, where disappointment hung thick like gnawing doubt. She recalled sitting at the dinner table, her heart pounding when she first expressed an interest in pursuing art. The forced smiles and veiled comments had spoken volumes. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Emily recognized she needed to reframe how she viewed her parents' reactions. This time she would own her narrative. If their skepticism came, it would be a challenge to navigate but not a barrier. With renewed purpose, she scrawled a reminder in the margins of her notebook. Your path is yours alone. The dark clouds gathered, ready to pour their rains upon her. But she was prepared. Courage flickered within her, ignited by the work she'd done alongside Derek. Together, they had not only crafted a proposal, they had crafted a piece of her identity. The words began to flow more freely now, an act of defiance against the suffocating doubts that accompanied her. At last, she stood up, scouting the room as if to ensure the space could provide a shelter for her boldness. She glanced at the dimly lit kitchen and imagined the family dinner she would soon host. Closing her eyes, she envisioned every member seated at the worn wooden table, Their faces poised between curiosity and judgment, an untamed sense of clarity pierced through her fear. They had to hear her voice, the real Emily, unwatered by their expectations. With shaking hands, she typed a message to Derek. "I'm ready. We do this." The response was immediate. "Going to be powerful. Trust yourself." In his words, Emily found solace. It was a reminder that she wasn't alone in this journey. She wasn't just an artist fighting for her vision. She was an individual fighting for her right to exist authentically. She let the thought wash over her, a comforting balm against the pressure of family loyalties threatening to reclaim her. When the day arrived for the family sit-down, she dressed deliberately, a crisp shirt with a splash of color reflecting her creativity, distinct from the muted tone she usually wore for family gatherings. Stepping out of her apartment, she felt the butterfly wings of anticipation flap wildly within her. This was not just about what she had to say, but about who she would become in the process. The drive to her parents' house was laced with nerves, but they morphed into determination as the streets flew by. Emily could visualize her proposal, the energy surrounding it felt almost tangible now. She was ready to face their questions, their doubts, to navigate the turbulent waters of expectations like a seasoned sailor. However, the moment she stood before the familiar door, the weight of uncertainty crashed back in. What if they dismissed her vision outright? Would she have the strength to stand her ground? With each heartbeat, her resolve solidified. This was her moment, a threshold that promised either transformation or a regression back to complacency. As she raised her hand to knock, a shiver cascaded through her spine, setting off a surge of adrenaline. The knock echoed, reverberating inside her as she waited for her identity to collide with their reality. "Get ready," she whispered to herself. "This is just the beginning." How her family would react remained a haunting unknown, and amid her burgeoning confidence, there was one lurking question. Would they meet the woman she had become, or would they still see the girl they once knew? The door swung open, revealing her mother, eyes wide, surprise coloring her features. Emily stood there, breath caught in her chest as she braced for the rush of questions and judgments that would inevitably follow. It wasn't just her proposal standing at the threshold, it was the entirety of her being, stripped bare and vulnerable. "Emily?" Her mother's voice wavered, the weight of 100 unspoken expectations lingering in the air. "You're early." "Hi, Mom," Emily replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She stepped inside, the familiar scents and sounds washing over her, immersing her in nostalgia and a sense of impending conflict. The living room was as she remembered. Family photos adorning the walls, each snapshot a frozen moment where she could see the girl they had always expected her to be. She hesitated for a brief moment, longing to retreat to that familiar role, to let the weight of choice slip from her shoulders. But the mantra she had penned in her notebook echoed in her mind. "Your path is yours alone." "Is everyone here?" she managed to ask, the anticipation thickening the air. "Just your father and brother. Why don't you come in?" As she followed her mother to the living room, the tension escalated within her. Her father turned, his brow furrowed, the unshakable expression of authority, and her brother, a more recent ally of their parents' ideals, glanced up from his phone, curiosity breaching the surface of his mundane distractions. "Emily," her father began, "we were just about to start dinner." "Actually," she interrupted, feeling the surge of adrenaline, "I'd like to speak first." Her mother's mouth opened slightly, as if to protest, but Emily pressed on, determined to seize the moment. "I've been thinking about my future and what I truly want. And I need to share with you something important." The family exchanged glances, the vibrations of disbelief and concern crackling around them. She could feel every unsaid word pressing against her, ready to surface at any sign of weakness. Yet for the first time the anxiety was met with resolve. "I want to pursue my art full-time," she declared, her voice gathering strength as the words slipped out. "I've spent too long hiding who I am, trying to align myself with your expectations. I need to be honest with myself and with you." Her brother shifted uncomfortably, while her father's eyes narrowed, dissecting her words as though they could uncover a hidden agenda. "You know how life works, Emily. Art isn't a career. It's a hobby," he stated, his voice tinged with a mix of disbelief and disappointment. "No, Dad," she countered, trembling slightly but resolute. "Art is not just a hobby for me. It's my passion, my way of connecting with the world. I refuse to dilute my dreams anymore. What I create has value." The silence that followed felt like a crack in the universe, as if the air itself held its breath. Emily's heart raced, each beat echoing with the monumental weight of her words. "Your mother and I have sacrificed so much for this family," her father continued, the tension in his demeanor thickening. "What makes you think it's wise to throw all that away for something so uncertain?" Emily felt the swell of feelings, frustration and fear mingling with a newfound confidence. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally acknowledging who I am. It's time for you to see that too." Her voice softened, tinged with urgency. "I need your support, not only your approval." But instead of support, she saw defensiveness flicker across her family's faces. Her mother, ever the mediator, looked between Emily and her father, weighing the storm brewing in the silence. Was this confrontation the turning point she fantasized about? Or just the beginning of another cycle of familial disappointment? "Time will show if you're making the right choice," her father muttered, crossing his arms. A fortress of doubt as disappointment settled in the pit of her stomach. Emily realized that this moment held more than just a family dinner. It was a reckoning, a challenge to unravel the dynamics that had ensnared her for so long. Her heart thudded with a mixture of hope and fear. Just like the art she craved to create, her life could become a canvas anew, one where she painted her own masterpiece and rewrote her family narrative. In the midst of this tumult, an unexpected sound broke through the tension, the faint rustle of a paper slipping from her brother's hand. He picked it up, and the expression on his face shifted, causing every gaze to shift towards him. "You need to see this," he murmured, holding a document she hadn't noticed before. As she moved closer, dread knotted in her stomach. Question after question piled up. What had he found? Was it a clue to leverage her argument, or a deeper revelation that could shift the argument rather dramatically? Whatever it was, there was no doubt about it, this was about to become a far more complicated conversation than she had ever prepared for. Get ready, she thought grimly, because it could change everything. Emily instinctively took a step toward her brother, her heart thrumming like a wild drum. The document in his hand seemed to radiate a pulsing energy, as if it could shatter the glassy tension that had settled across the room. The gentle rustle of paper barely registered against the escalating cadence of her pulse. What had he found? A will? A letter? Or perhaps evidence that their father's expectations ran deeper than she had ever imagined? "Show me," she said, her voice firm despite the uncertainty twisting inside her. Her brother hesitated, his gaze flicking between her and their parents. The judgment in their eyes was palpable, a mixture of concern and skepticism that weighed heavily in the air. "Emily," their mother interrupted, her voice soft but coated in an insistence that made it clear she wasn't ready for the upheaval. "Maybe it's best if you leave this. For now. This is important," Emily insisted, not backing down. She didn't want to retreat anymore. She fought too hard to stand her ground, and the stakes had never felt higher. Her brother offered her the paper, his expression wavering between caution and curiosity. As the sheet landed in her hands, the words leapt off the page, igniting her mind with confusion and intrigue. It was a letter, dated before her parents had even met, filled with legal jargon that briefly obscured its meaning. "What is this?" she asked, her eyes darting through the contents. "Why do we have this?" "I found it tucked away in Dad's old desk," he said cautiously. "It's south regarding an estate. It appears to have something to do with family inheritance." The term struck a chord, a sense of urgency injected itself into her certainty. What about family heritage? Was this yet another device for control? Another hidden agenda that could manipulate her choices? Is this connected to the art?" she asked, voice trembling. The recognition of her burgeoning voice quaked within the gravity of the moment. Could it be that her pursuit of art had deeper, unforeseen implications for everyone? Her brother shrugged, uncertain. "I think it might have to do with your great-uncle the artist. Maybe there's some sort of legacy, something that could lead somewhere." Emotion swelled inside Emily, a paradox of excitement and apprehension. For once, a flicker of hope surged like currents in her veins. Maybe there was a thread connecting her family's past to her own future. Yet the shadow of her father's disapproval loomed ominously, a dark cloud ready to envelop any light that dared to break through. "What does it mean?" she pressed, each word laced with trepidation. Her brother glanced again at their parents, clearly unsure how they would respond. But it wasn't just their reaction she was concerned about. She felt a gnawing urge to uncover what lay hidden behind the words, to explore the truth buried beneath familial expectations. "Let us read it together," she suggested, determination igniting within her. This was her moment, one that could either solidify her family's grip on her life or offer a new route, one that blended the dreams first whispered in the solitude of her studio. "Maybe they LLC it's not just a hobby," she thought optimistically, gripping the paper tightly as her heartbeat slowed, focusing on the words ahead like an artist preparing a canvas. But then her father's voice cut through the fragile air, a gravity that stopped her thoughts cold. "You don't need to read that," he asserted, his posture brimming with authority. "Family matters should stay private." The resistance in his tone ignited a fire in her chest. She was done with privacy and secrecy. She was ready for the truth. This was to be her declaration, her art, not just on canvas, but across the tapestry of her family. She was going to confront the web of fears and expectations together with her brother, and against all odds, as she opened her mouth to respond, the family dynamic shifted. Curiosity, panic, and a vested interest came together, gathering like storm clouds. What awaited them behind those words and her father's guarded facade could change everything: their legacy, Emily's path, and the very definition of what it meant to be family. In that moment, she understood that she held the pen to her own story, and with an almost instinctual force, she was prepared to inscribe her truth, even if it tangled into chaos. "Is this a legacy meant for all of us or just another chain?" she thought, glancing at the letter while anticipating the inevitable clash to come. And right then she knew. This was the beginning of her biggest confrontation yet, a divergence from her family's expectations, and a daring plunge into the unknown. As her mind raced forward, she wondered what revelation awaited them, and how she would navigate the turbulent waters ahead. The time had come to confront not only her family's past, but to challenge her own place in that history. There would be no turning back now. Emily stood at the farmhouse threshold, the vibrant mid-afternoon sun illuminating her journey toward transformation. Each beam felt like an affirmation of her resolve, mingling the newfound excitement coursing through her veins with the urgent need for validation from her family. The weight of the letter still lingered heavily in her pocket, a tangible symbol of her lineage that had the power to redefine her identity. With each step further into the farmhouse, memories intertwined with speculation, urging her to embrace the very essence of who she had become. Harnessing lessons from daunting conversations with her family and the community, she had come to understand that her journey extended beyond mere artistic ambitions. It embodied the pursuit of self-acceptance and familial recognition. Determined, Emily focused on her vision. Today would mark the moment she showcased her plans for the farmhouse, her dream of turning it into a vibrant arts hub for the community. The doubts that had once dictated her decisions now stood as mere echoes in the backdrop of her mind. She would confront not just family skepticism but challenge herself to carve a space where her aspirations could flourish amidst uncertainty. As her close friends and local educators began to gather for the unveiling of her proposal, warmth enveloped her, igniting a spark of courage. Derek arrived, offering a reassuring nod as he met her gaze. Their collaboration had become a lifeline, his unwavering belief in her vision fortifying her determination. With a deep breath, she felt her anxiety dissipate. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice steady as she stood before her friends in the spacious main room. "This farmhouse, once a relic of my childhood dreams, represents an opportunity to give back to future generations. I see it as a place where creativity meets learning, where children will engage with art, discovery, and community." The enthusiasm crackled in the air. Each aspect of her proposal poured forth with clarity and passion, aiming to awaken a sense of communal ownership of the space. As she detailed plans for workshops, storytelling sessions, and exhibitions, the dreamy vision she had once harbored began to materialize into achievable objectives. The room echoed with nods of understanding, smiles, and shared excitement. Finally, Emily turned her attention to the letter still nestled in her pocket, its potential for revealing family history looming large. Before she ended, she took a leap of faith, remembering her journey not just as an artist, but as a daughter and sister navigating family expectations. "As we embark on this path together, I need to clarify how it intertwines with my own family heritage," she said, her pulse racing with energy. "There's a history connected to this farmhouse, a legacy I've only just begun to uncover." Gasps filled the room. Sharing her motivations behind the proposal served as not only a catalyst of determination, but an exploration of her identity amongst familial ties that had previously constricted her. The realizations began to affix themselves solidly to her narrative, a rebirth of purpose that rejected the confines of judgment. Once the meeting concluded, the enthusiasm of her friends ignited a profound sense of validation within Emily, cementing the realization that she no longer sought acceptance solely from her family. The conversation with her brother now felt like a turning point, no longer a confrontation around expectations but an invitation to embrace individuality. Later that evening, Emily dialed Nick's number, a sudden urge coursing through her as she prepared to fill the silence left after their last meeting. The anticipation became palpable, reminiscent of earlier anxieties, but now tinged with newfound confidence. "Hey, it's me," she said as he answered, determination lacing her tone. "I need to talk to you about something." She could almost hear him bracing himself, but she was ready. "I'm not looking for your approval, Nick, but I want to share my vision for the farmhouse." Each word unfolded like petals of a blooming flower, revealing the essence of her journey and inviting him into her world, rather than demanding acceptance through submission. As they began to discuss her plans, she realized that she was no longer the little sister cowering in her brother's shadow. Emily spoke with conviction, rediscovering her own power to shape her narrative. "Look," she asserted gently but firmly, "I know you might not understand my choices right away, but I've fought too hard to back down now. This is important to me, Nick." With each point she illustrated, from community engagement to artistic outreach, something minimal but significant shifted in their conversation. Nick's guarded demeanor softened as curiosity slowly replaced skepticism. Emily felt proud. She began to see the glimpses of support forming through his skepticism. By the end of their conversation, to her surprise, Nick expressed interest in visiting the farmhouse, supporting her vision no matter how tentative his first leanings felt. The potential for reconciliation over time left Emily hopeful, marking a pivotal moment toward redefining their sibling bond. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over the farmhouse, Emily stood at its door, gazing out at the horizon. The journey had been long and fraught with uncertainty, but she had emerged victorious. The culmination of courage, growth, and heartfelt determination allowed her to accept her identity as an artist and a member of a complex family unit. She felt a profound sense of satisfaction wash over her, a recognition that her dreams would not only shape her future but also become a conduit to forge new familial ties. As she closed the door behind her, Emily knew she was equipped to navigate whatever lay ahead. She was no longer the timid girl lost to expectations, but the empowered woman committed to realizing her aspirations, unbound by familial legacies. It felt like a new beginning, a chapter brimming with potential both for herself and those who would enter the farmhouse doors, ready to discover their own powerful truths within the world of creativity she envisioned. Now this is your call to action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. And most importantly, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the transformative power of stories like Emily's. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.